The Disappearance of Sneha Philip, 2001. Sneha Ann Philip was born in India on October 7, 1969. When she was young, her family moved to Albany, New York, where she grew up. She was smart and hardworking, so in 1995 she went to medical school in Chicago. There, she met another medical student named Ron Lieberman. Sneha was 1 year ahead of him in her studies. The two fell in love, and Sneha decided to take a year off from school so Ron could catch up. She spent that year traveling around Italy. They both graduated from medical school in 1999 and got internships in New York City. Sneha started working in Manhattan while Ron worked in the Bronx. They both had busy schedules, but they were happy. Sneha's parents lived just an hour away, and her brother lived nearby too. The couple got married in May 2000 and moved into an apartment in Battery Park City, only a few blocks away from the World Trade Center. On September 10, 2001, Ron went to work around 11 a.m. Sneha, who was 31, had the day off. She planned to clean the apartment because her cousin was coming for dinner later that week. Around 2 p.m., she chatted with her mother online for about 2 hours. Then she changed into a brown dress and sandals and went out to run some errands. She dropped off her dry cleaning and went shopping nearby. Using her husband's credit card, she bought some clothes, shoes, and home items. That evening, Ron came home from work and noticed that Sneha wasn't there. He wasn't worried at first. Sometimes she stayed with her brother or cousin overnight. But the next morning, September 11th, she still wasn't home. Ron went to work anyway. When he got there, he saw people gathered around a TV. The World Trade Center was under attack. He tried calling home, but there was no answer. Sneha didn't have a cell phone, and chaos took over the city. Worried, Ron managed to get a ride downtown in an ambulance later that day. It took hours before he reached Manhattan that night. When he finally got to their apartment, he couldn't get in because the power was out. He stayed at a friend's place, and the next morning he returned. Everything inside was covered in dust from the attack, but nothing was disturbed, except for small paw prints from their cats. Sneha's things were all still there. Her glasses, ID, passport, and credit cards, except the one she had used the day before. Sneha was gone. Ron searched all over the city, showing her photo to anyone who would listen. But since she had gone missing before the attacks, reporters didn't pay much attention. Sneha's brother even claimed on camera that he spoke to her during the attacks and that she told him she was helping injured people, but later it was found that he made that up. Police investigated and discovered that Sneha's life had become troubled before her disappearance. She had recently lost her hospital job for being late and drinking too much. She had also been spending nights out in bars and meeting new people, which caused tension in her marriage. On the morning of September 10th, she had gone to court with Ron and they reportedly argued. When she vanished that evening, police believed she may have died in the 9/11 attacks, but there was no proof. A security camera in a boutique captured a woman resembling Sneha browsing through clothing racks on the afternoon of September 10, 2001. The last confirmed sighting of her before she vanished. Years later, her husband tried to have her recognized as a 9/11 victim, which would also allow compensation from the victim's fund. Police, however, said she might have died the night before or disappeared for other reasons. The case remained unclear. In 2008, after long legal battles, a panel ruled 3-2 that she should be listed as a 9/11 victim, saying it was most likely she died trying to help others. No one knows for sure what happened to Sneha Ann Philip. Some believe she died heroically at the World Trade Center, while others think she met with foul play or took her own life the night before. All that is certain is that she disappeared just as the world changed forever, and her story remains one of the most mysterious and heartbreaking cases connected to that tragic day. Carancas Impact Event, 2007. On the morning of September 15, 2007, a quiet little village in southern Peru called Carancas suddenly became the center of something strange and frightening. The people there were living their usual peaceful lives, mostly working on farms and taking care of animals, when the sky suddenly lit up. A meteorite, a huge rock from space, was speeding toward Earth at an incredible speed, glowing and burning as it tore through the atmosphere. Normally, when such rocks enter our skies, they burn up before ever reaching the ground. But this one was too large and too strong. It kept going until it slammed into the earth near Carancas, creating a huge explosion that shook the ground. The sound could be heard miles away. Windows broke, roofs were damaged, and people were thrown off their feet by the shockwave. Rocks kept falling from the sky for several minutes afterward. Houses nearby, like the one belonging to Javier Sarmiento, were damaged as well. After the explosion, a thick column of smoke rose into the sky. The people of Carancas thought there was a fire and feared it might spread to their homes. When they reached the site, they found a huge crater about 50 feet wide. The ground was still hot, and a pool of bubbling water sat at the bottom. A strange, sharp smell filled the air, and there was dust and debris scattered all around. One farmer, Gregorio Uri, rode his bicycle to the site and later went to a nearby town to inform the police. When he returned with authorities, many villagers had already gathered around the crater, collecting small stones as souvenirs. Nobody knew what to think or what had really fallen from the sky. Then something even stranger began to happen. Many people who went near the crater started feeling sick. They had headaches, sore throats, and nausea. Some began vomiting. Their animals got sick too. Several were seen bleeding from their noses. Soon the local clinics were full, and panic started to spread. People feared that the meteorite might be radioactive or poisoned with something from outer space. Some believed the rocks were cursed. Others thought maybe it carried a disease from another world. A few villagers refused to drink water, thinking the pool or the ground had contaminated their wells. In total, over 200 people were reported sick. Even doctors who came to investigate felt unwell after visiting the crater. Rumors started spreading quickly, not just in Peru, but all around the world. Some said it was not a meteorite at all, but a crashed U.S. spy satellite. Others claimed it might have been a volcano or a strange natural explosion. Scientists and health workers began testing the soil, water, and air. They discovered that the meteorite was made of ordinary stone, and not metal as many people had guessed. When it hit the ground, the intense heat and impact caused underground water to boil, releasing gases and dust. These gases, mixed with sulfur from the soil, were likely what made people feel sick, not radiation or alien disease. After some time, the symptoms disappeared, and the village slowly returned to normal. The death of Jonathan Luna, 2003. Jonathan Luna was born in 1965 and grew up in the South Bronx, New York, in a large public housing area. His father was Filipino and his mother was black. As a child, Jonathan stayed out of trouble and loved reading books. His friends said he was a little different. In high school, he often wore a suit and tie, even though it was not required. He cared about his looks and liked to dress nicely. After finishing high school, Jonathan went to Fordham University, where he graduated in 1987 with a degree in history. Later, he studied law at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. When his father got cancer, Jonathan took a year off from school to take care of him. After returning, he became class president and was very popular. During law school, he met a medical student named Angela Hopkins. They fell in love and married in 1993. The couple had 2 sons. That same year, Jonathan started working for a law firm in Washington, D.C., and then joined the Federal Trade Commission. Later, he worked as a prosecutor for the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. In 1999, he moved to Baltimore, Maryland, to work as an assistant U.S. attorney. His wife became a doctor, and they settled in Elkridge, Maryland. At first, Jonathan was seen as a talented and friendly lawyer. His coworkers described him as intelligent, funny, and hard-working. But in 2001, his new boss didn't get along with him. They disagreed about how to handle certain cases, and Jonathan began feeling stressed. In 2002, Jonathan worked on a bank robbery trial. The main evidence was a container filled with about $36,000 in cash. After the trial ended, that container went missing. Some people thought Jonathan had taken it, especially since he had credit card debts. Others said he was innocent because the money was left unattended and anyone could have stolen it. Still, Jonathan's reputation was damaged. He got a bad performance review and was warned about his job. His boss once even told him not to come in the next day, even though he didn't have the right to do that. Jonathan became anxious about losing his position. Around this time, he was fined $25 by a strict judge for being late to court, which only added to his stress. On the night of December 3, 2003, Jonathan was working on a drug case involving two men who used a music studio to sell drugs. He called a defense lawyer at 9:06 p.m. to say he was finishing some paperwork. At 11 p.m., he got a phone call and told someone, possibly his wife, that he had to return to the office. At 11:38 p.m., he left his office. He forgot his glasses and cell phone. His car, a silver Honda Accord, was later tracked driving north. His debit card was used at an ATM in Delaware at 12:57 a.m. and again at a gas station in Pennsylvania at 3:20 a.m., where he calmly bought 2 sodas, water, and 2 tanks of gas. At 5 a.m., a worker named Danielle saw a car with its headlights near a creek in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, about 95 miles from Baltimore. It was Jonathan's car. The engine was still running, and there was blood on the seats. Police found $200 in cash inside and discovered Jonathan's body face down in the creek, wearing a suit and tie. He had 36 cuts and stab wounds, many shallow, but one deep wound had cut his neck. His own pocket knife was found nearby. The coroner said he had drowned, but his death was ruled a homicide. Strangely, there was blood in the car from another person and a partial fingerprint that didn't belong to him. Investigators were divided. Some said he had been murdered, while others thought he might have injured himself to gain sympathy from his boss, and things went wrong. They found his name on adult websites and learned he had visited Philadelphia several times recently. He also had heavy debts on 16 credit cards, and his wife didn't know about some of them. 2 main theories remain. Maybe he met someone that night, perhaps for intimacy or to make a deal, and they killed him using his own knife. The second theory is that he did it to himself or it was an accident. Maybe the stress from work and money problems drove him to hurt himself, not realizing how serious it would be. More than 20 years later, his strange death remains one of the most mysterious cases in modern American history. Small towns are usually quiet, peaceful places. People there live simple lives, and not much ever changes. But sometimes strange and shocking events can happen even in the calmest of places. One such place was a tiny Sicilian village called Canneto di Caronia, where a series of mysterious fires left people confused and frightened for years. Canneto di Caronia is a very small town on the island of Sicily, Italy. Only around 150 people live there, and life was always quiet and uneventful. There were no big attractions or events, just the daily routines of its residents. That peace was broken in December 2003 when something strange happened. One evening, a man named Antonio Pizzino was relaxing at home watching TV when his television suddenly exploded in sparks. Within seconds, other appliances in his home, the fuse box, kitchen equipment, air conditioner, and computer, also burst into flames for no reason. Sparks flew everywhere, and before long, the Pizzino house was on fire. In just a few hours, the entire building had burned down. But this was only the beginning. On February 9, 2004, 2 more homes caught fire in the same strange way. The fires seemed to start by themselves, without gas leaks, wiring problems, or any other clear cause. Scared and confused, officials evacuated 39 residents from the area and began an investigation. The local electric company, Enel, even shut off all power to the town to stop the fires. But to everyone's shock, the fires continued, even with the electricity cut off. Between February and March 2004, the town experienced 92 separate fires. Firefighters and investigators were stunned. Even scientists from NASA and the Italian National Research Institute, CNR, got involved, but no one could explain what was happening. Everyday items, from compasses to car locks, would suddenly catch fire, even if they had very little electricity. By June 2004, the fires stopped on their own. People slowly returned to their homes and tried to go back to normal life. But the question of what caused the fires remained a complete mystery. Investigators looked for signs of arson, but found none. Years passed, and in 2008, the case was officially closed without answers. Then, almost 10 years later, in August 2014, the fires started again. Once more, appliances and random objects began burning for no reason. This time, though, police had better tools, including improved security cameras. The second wave of fires was smaller but lasted longer. As police investigated, they began to find clues that were missing a decade earlier. After reviewing camera footage, they realized the fires were being started by someone. Eventually, the evidence pointed to Giuseppe Pezzino, the son of the same man, Antonio, whose house had burned down in 2003. In March 2015, police arrested Giuseppe Pezzino for arson and fraud, and they also suspected Antonio was involved. Investigators believed the two had started the fires on purpose, hoping to claim money for damages by making it look like a mysterious, unexplained phenomenon. At last, it seemed the long mystery was solved. But not everyone agreed. Many townspeople refused to believe the Pezzinos were behind the original 2003 and 2004 fires. Scientists from NASA and CNR had been unable to find any human explanation for how those earlier fires began. Even experienced arson experts could not figure out how the fires were set. There were also strange details from the original investigation. Police officers reported unusual electromagnetic activity, mysterious lights in the sky, and even a helicopter crash with unexplained rotor damage. These odd events made many believe something far stranger was going on. The death of Andrew Gosden, 2007. Andrew Gosden was born on July 10, 1993, in Doncaster, South Yorkshire, England. He lived with his father, Kevin, his mother, Glenys, and his sister, Charlotte. Andrew was a quiet and intelligent boy who mostly stayed at home. Whenever he did go out, he always told his parents where he was going. Andrew was an excellent student. He was especially good at mathematics and was expected to get straight A's that year. His teachers said he was so smart that he sometimes got bored in class. Andrew dreamed of going to Cambridge University to study math one day. Andrew had poor eyesight and wore strong glasses. He was also deaf in one ear. He loved video games and listened to heavy metal music. He had lost several mobile phones in the past and did not have one when he disappeared. At the time, he was 14 years old, but looked a bit younger. He once told his parents he wanted to dye his brown hair black. He had also been a Cub Scout, but decided to quit a few months before he went missing. During the summer of 2007, Andrew's parents suggested he visit his grandmother in London, but he wasn't interested. School started again in September. A few days before he vanished, Andrew did something unusual. Instead of taking the school bus home, he walked 4 miles. He did this twice. On the evening of September 13, 2007, Andrew worked on a jigsaw puzzle with his father and later watched TV with his mother. The next morning, September 14th, he seemed tired and in a bad mood, which was not normal for him. He left home at 8:05 a.m. and was seen walking toward the bus stop, but he didn't get on the bus. Instead, he walked to a nearby ATM and withdrew £200. A security camera later showed him returning home, where he took off his school uniform, put it in the washing machine, and changed into black jeans and a black t-shirt. He packed a backpack decorated with patches of music bands and took his wallet, keys, and PlayStation Portable, but not the charger, passport, or an extra £100 he had saved. At 8:30 a.m., he left home again. He was seen walking toward Doncaster railway station, where he bought a one-way ticket to London for about £31. When the clerk told him a return ticket was only 50 pence more, he still said no. Witnesses saw him board the train to King's Cross Station at 9:35 a.m. He sat quietly, playing his video game. When his teachers noticed he wasn't in school, they tried to call his parents, but they accidentally left a message for the wrong number. So Andrew's parents had no idea anything was wrong. That evening, they thought he was in his room or the basement, doing homework or playing games. When they couldn't find him, they called friends and neighbors, then the police at 7 p.m. Police searched London and checked with family members there, but no one had seen him. Some people said they saw Andrew at a Pizza Hut or sleeping in a park, but none were confirmed. His bank account and devices showed no further activity. Andrew had no internet or email use. Over the years, several theories have been discussed. Some believe Andrew went to London to visit museums or landmarks, but got lost or met trouble. However, he could have done this with his parents' permission, so this theory feels weak. Andrew liked heavy metal music, and some bands were performing in London near that time. Maybe he wanted to see one secretly. Andrew enjoyed a TV show where a character faked his death and started over. Maybe he wanted to run away, but it's very hard to start a new life with little money. Some think Andrew may have planned to end his life, but there was no sign of distress, and it's unclear why he'd go all the way to London. Others believe Andrew met someone, either online or in person, who tricked or harmed him. To this day, Andrew Gosden's disappearance remains one of the most mysterious cases in Britain. He left home like it was a normal morning, but he never came back. No one knows why he went to London or what happened after he walked out of King's Cross Station. Salish Sea Feet Mystery, 2007. Since 2007, something strange has been happening around the Salish Sea, a body of water that connects the U.S. state of Washington and the Canadian province of British Columbia. Every now and then, a human foot washes up on shore, sometimes in a shoe, sometimes bare. People have found them on beaches, islands, and coastlines, and nobody really understands why this keeps happening. The first discovery happened on August 20th, 2007. A 12-year-old girl was walking along Jedediah Island in British Columbia when she saw a size 12 men's Adidas shoe. Inside it was a sock, and inside the sock was a human right foot. Only 6 days later, on August 26th, another right foot was found on Gabriola Island, also in British Columbia. It was inside a different shoe, but again it was a man's foot. Both feet were from men, and both were right feet, so they clearly didn't belong to the same person. The first foot was later linked to a missing man who had suffered from depression, but the second one remains unidentified to this day. In February 2008, a third foot was found on Valdez Island inside a size 11 Nike shoe. It belonged to a young man who had gone missing 4 years earlier. Police said his death did not seem suspicious. Soon after, in May 2008, a woman's foot was discovered on Kirkland Island in a blue and white New Balance shoe. Then, in June 2008, 2 hikers found a left foot floating near West Ham Island. It turned out to match the Nike shoe found earlier, meaning both feet belonged to the same man. That same summer, another right foot washed up near Pesht, Washington, on August 1st, 2008. Police thought it may have floated down from Canadian waters. A few months later, in May 2008, another woman's left foot in a similar blue and white New Balance shoe was found near Richmond, British Columbia, and it matched the woman's right foot from earlier. By the end of 2009, several more feet had appeared, some identified and others not. In October 2009, a right foot in a Nike running shoe washed up in Richmond. It was identified as a missing man from Vancouver. In 2010, 2 more discoveries were made, one on Whidbey Island and another in Tacoma, Washington. Both seemed to belong to either a young woman or a small adult, but DNA tests could not find a match. Over the next few years, the discoveries continued. In 2011, hikers found a foot near False Creek in Vancouver, and later that same year, another foot belonging to a man who had gone missing in 1987 was found near Sasamat Lake. His foot had been drifting or buried somewhere for 23 years before it was discovered. In 2012, another shoe with bones inside was found in Vancouver, and in 2014, a New Balance sneaker with a foot in it appeared on a Seattle beach. The shoe model was made in 2008, meaning the foot could not have been very old. Then in 2016, 2 matching feet were found just 5 days apart on Vancouver Island, both belonging to the same person. In 2017, a leg with a shoe still attached washed up near Jordan River on Vancouver Island. By 2018, the count had reached nearly 20 feet. That year, another man found a foot in a hiking boot stuck in a pile of logs on Gabriola Island. Even in 2019, reports of similar discoveries continued. So far, more than 20 human feet have been found around the Salish Sea since 2007. Many belong to people who went missing, but some have never been identified. At first, people feared a serial killer might be behind it, but scientists later found a more natural explanation. When a person's body is in the ocean for a long time, it starts to break apart. The ankle joints are weak and can easily separate. Because many people wear running shoes made with foam that floats, their feet drift to the surface and eventually wash ashore. This may sound dark, but it is also part of how nature works. The cold water of the Salish Sea helps preserve the remains, making them last longer. Brianna Maitland, 2004. Brianna Maitland was born on October 8, 1986, in Burlington, Vermont. She grew up on her family's farm in East Franklin with her parents, Bruce and Kelly, and her older brother. Brianna was a kind, friendly, and independent girl. When she turned 17, she decided she wanted to live on her own. She wasn't having problems with her parents. She just wanted to be closer to her friends and have more freedom. She transferred to a high school about 15 miles away, the same one her friends attended. She moved around often, staying with different friends and boyfriends, but never settled in one place for long. In February 2004, she dropped out of high school and moved in with her close friend Jillian Stout in Sheldon, Vermont. Around this time, Brianna was attacked by a girl named Keely Lacrosse, who had once been her friend. The fight happened at a party. Even though Brianna knew martial arts, she refused to fight back. She was beaten badly. She got a broken nose, a concussion, and bruises. She filed charges against Keely, but the case was dropped after Brianna disappeared. Many people believed the fight may have been connected to a love triangle, as both girls liked the same guy. On March 19, 2004, Brianna took her GED exam. Her father was out of town, but her mother Kelly was nearby. After the exam, they went out for lunch to celebrate. Kelly said Brianna was happy that day and talked about going to college. Later, while shopping together, Brianna suddenly saw something outside the store that caught her attention. She went out to check and came back a few minutes later, looking nervous and shaken. Kelly didn't know what had happened. That evening, Brianna went to work at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery, Vermont, where she worked as a dishwasher. Kelly dropped her off at home so she could get ready for her shift. Brianna left a note for her roommate Jillian saying she'd be back after work. She drove her mother's 1985 Oldsmobile to the restaurant and worked until about 11:20 p.m. Her coworkers said she was in a good mood and left alone after her shift. She told them she was tired and needed to rest before working her second job the next day. The next afternoon, Brianna's car was found abandoned in a strange position. It had been backed into the side of an old, empty house known as the Old Dutchburn House, about a mile from her workplace. The car looked like it had been backed into the building on purpose. The rear wheels were lifted off the ground. The car doors were unlocked, the keys were missing, and 2 of Brianna's paychecks were still inside. A water bottle, loose change, and a cigarette were found nearby. At first, police thought the car belonged to a drunk driver and had it towed. No one realized Brianna was missing yet. Her friend Jillian assumed Brianna had stayed somewhere else. It wasn't until March 23rd that Brianna's mother started calling around, worried because no one had seen her. That same day, Kelly filed a missing person report. Soon after, police realized the car was Brianna's and began investigating. Witnesses said they had seen the car at the house between 11:30 p.m. and early morning. Some said the headlights or turn signal were still on. As police searched, they found no signs of a struggle in the car, but did find Brianna's glasses, makeup, and medicine inside. They later said they had DNA from the car, but never shared whose it was. Some people thought Brianna ran away, but she had left behind all her things and was planning for college. Others believed she may have taken her life, but again, there was no sign of that. One of the strongest theories is that Brianna was attacked by someone she knew, possibly over drugs or a relationship problem. She had recently been in contact with 2 drug dealers, and rumors said they might have been involved. Police even raided their house after a tip said Brianna was being held there, but she wasn't found. Her car, her missing keys, and her last moments all remain a mystery. Most believe she met someone she knew that night and that things went very wrong. She likely tried to escape but crashed into the house, and whoever was there took her away. To this day, no one knows what really happened to Brianna Maitland. Robert William Fisher, 2001. Robert William Fisher was born on April 13, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York. When he was 15, his parents divorced, and it deeply affected him. He often spoke about it as an adult and promised himself that his own marriage would never end in divorce. In 1987, Robert married a woman named Mary Cooper. They had 2 children, a daughter named Brittany and a son named Bobby. To others, they looked like a happy family, but inside the home, things were far from perfect. Robert was very controlling. He told his family what to wear, what to eat, and even how to decorate their home. Mary had to ask permission before doing almost anything. Robert's mother said he was a lot like his father, who was strict and controlling. Robert didn't show much emotion and often kept his distance from others, including his wife and kids. He wanted his son to hunt and fish with him, but Bobby wasn't interested. Instead of accepting that, Robert would get angry and feel embarrassed. Robert worked as a respiratory therapist at a hospital in Scottsdale, Arizona. His boss said he was a good worker, always on time and willing to stay late. But outside of work, his home life was falling apart. In 1998, Robert and Mary went to their church for marriage counseling. Robert had been unfaithful more than once. He once confessed to sleeping with another woman and later told coworkers he had been with a prostitute. He worried that Mary would find out and planned to make things right, but it seemed too late. Their arguments became more common and more heated. Neighbors often heard shouting from their home. One neighbor said he heard Mary yell, "I could have done better. Maybe we should get a divorce." Divorce was Robert's biggest fear. He had sworn never to let that happen, no matter what. On April 9, 2001, Robert took his daughter Brittany to her school ceremony, where she was going to receive an academic award, but he got bored and made her leave before she could get it. That night, the couple argued again, likely about divorce. Between 9:30 and 10:15 p.m., Robert killed his wife and 2 children. Mary was shot in the head and had her throat cut. Both children were also killed the same way. Afterward, Robert disconnected a gas line, poured gasoline through the hallway, and set up a candle as a delayed fuse. Around 8:40 a.m. the next morning, the house exploded in a massive fire that shook nearby homes. When firefighters arrived, the house was completely in flames. After the fire was put out, they found the bodies of Mary, Brittany, and Bobby inside, but Robert was missing. Investigators quickly realized that the fire was set to cover up the murders. Their family dog, Blue, was also missing. Deep in the Tonto National Forest, roughly 100 miles north of Scottsdale, searchers discovered Robert's white Toyota 4Runner, which belonged to Mary, with the dog still alive inside. Robert's hat, the same one seen in ATM footage from the night before, was also found in the car. That ATM video was the last confirmed sighting of him. At 10:43 p.m. that night, he withdrew $280 in cash and then vanished. He never used his bank account again. A few days later, a bartender in a small Arizona town reported seeing Robert with a woman who had long black hair. Police checked hospitals and coworkers, but found no one who matched her. The FBI charged Robert Fisher with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of arson. In 2002, he was placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Over the years, there have been many supposed sightings in Arizona, Canada, and other places, but none have been confirmed. Robert may have killed himself in the forest, or he may still be alive somewhere, living under a different name. To this day, Robert William Fisher remains missing, and the murders of his wife and children remain one of the most disturbing unsolved cases of the 2000s. Danielle Imbo and Richard Petrone Jr., 2005. On the cold night of February 19, 2005, 2 friends, Danielle Imbo and Richard Petrone Jr., left a bar in Philadelphia and vanished without a single trace. They said goodbye to their friends, got into Richard's black Dodge Dakota truck, and drove away. From that moment on, no one ever saw them again. There were no phone calls, no credit card use, no signs of trouble, and not even Richard's truck was ever found. It was as if the 2 of them had been erased from the world in a matter of minutes. For almost 20 years, both families have been left heartbroken and confused. Danielle Imbo was born on August 7, 1970, in Philadelphia. She loved music like her father, who was a singer. She also enjoyed reading and spending time with her family. As an adult, she married Joe Imbo, and they had a son in 2003. But soon after, their marriage began to fall apart. In 2004, Joe suddenly told Danielle he wanted a divorce after meeting another woman on a flight to the Super Bowl. The news shocked and hurt Danielle deeply. Their divorce was tense and painful. Danielle was struggling emotionally but was trying to move on. Around this time, she reconnected with an old friend, Richard Petrone Jr. Richard was born on August 29, 1969, also in Philadelphia. He was 35 years old, a single father to a teenage daughter named Angela, and worked at his family's bakery, Viking Pastries. Friends and family described him as kind, relaxed, and hard-working, not someone who had enemies. Danielle and Richard had known each other since childhood. They grew up on the same street, and Danielle was even close friends with Richard's sister. They cared about each other deeply, though Danielle was unsure if she was ready for another relationship so soon after her divorce. Still, the two enjoyed spending time together, and Richard's daughter said she had never seen her father so happy. On the evening of February 19th, Richard went out for dinner in Philadelphia. Later, he wanted to go hear a live band at a nearby bar called Abilene's, but didn't want to go alone. He called his sister, who happened to be hanging out with Danielle at the time. Danielle agreed to join him, happy to see Richard again after a few weeks apart. Richard picked her up in his truck, and they met friends at the bar. Everyone said the two seemed very happy, laughing, hugging, and enjoying the night. Around 11:45 p.m. they decided to leave, since both had plans the next morning. They said goodbye and drove off together, planning for Richard to drop Danielle at her home in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, before heading home himself. But neither of them ever made it home. The next morning, Danielle missed her hair appointment, something she never did. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and no one could reach her. Her brother John went to her house to check on her, but everything inside looked normal. Lights off, nothing missing, just as if she had never returned. While he was there, Danielle's ex-husband Joe arrived with their son. Danielle was supposed to take care of him that day, but she was nowhere to be found. John told Joe she was just running late, hoping not to worry him, but inside he knew something was wrong. The families of both Danielle and Richard quickly realized they were missing and started searching everywhere, driving through city streets, checking bridges and rivers, handing out flyers, and even hiring a helicopter to look for Richard's truck. But there was nothing. No car, no bodies, no clues. When police got involved, they found no signs of activity after that night. The couple wasn't caught on any cameras or toll booths, and their phones, bank cards, and social media were never used again. Investigators questioned their friends and cleared them of suspicion. Then they looked at Danielle's ex-husband, Joe, who had a history of anger and had once threatened Richard. But Joe had an alibi. He was at a child's birthday party out of town that night, and several people confirmed it. He even took a lie detector test. With no solid leads, the case quickly went cold. To this day, neither Danielle Imbo, Richard Petrone, nor Richard's truck have ever been found. Their disappearance remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries of the 2000s. Two ordinary people who simply vanished into the night, leaving behind only questions that still have no answers. Adre'Anna Jackson, 2005. 10-year-old Adre'Anna Jackson was last seen on the cold morning of December 2, 2005, in Lakewood, Washington. She left home wearing a black coat and carrying a black and pink backpack. She told her mom she was going to check if school was open because it had snowed heavily overnight. Her mom, Yvette Gervais, gave her a hug and told her to come right back if school was closed. Adre'Anna said, "Okay, I will." Then she walked off toward Tillicum Elementary School. It wasn't a long walk, and she had done it many times before. But that morning, school had actually been canceled because of the snow. Some teachers were still there, but no one saw her. Other kids playing nearby also didn't see her. Because of the snow day, it took a long time before her parents realized something was wrong. They thought she was at school all day. When she didn't come home in the afternoon, they found out school had been canceled, and Adre'Anna had never arrived there. Her mom called 911 around 4:19 p.m., crying as she told the police she had made a mistake by not checking if school was open. Within 30 minutes, search teams from several police departments began looking for the missing girl. It was freezing cold, about 30 degrees, and getting dark fast. Posters and news reports went out with Adre'Anna's picture and description. She was just under 5 feet tall, weighed 78 pounds, had brown hair with reddish highlights, and was wearing jeans, white tennis shoes, and a black puffy jacket. People who knew her said she was a bright, curious girl who loved reading, drawing, helping others, and playing outside. She also loved her guinea pigs and often did small chores for neighbors to earn pocket money. She liked visiting the Tillicum Library, where she proudly said she was their best patron. Adre'Anna lived with her mother Yvette and her father John Federici in a small apartment near American Lake. Her parents were not married and struggled financially. Yvette was on disability, and John worked off and on. Their neighborhood was known for having a lot of crime and registered offenders. Adre'Anna's father had a criminal record, and in 2002, police had been called to their home after he hit her. He was arrested and charged with assault, but later released on probation. Even so, both parents cooperated fully with the police after their daughter went missing. Officers questioned them for over 10 hours that first night. Over 500 people joined the search in the coming days. They went door to door, searched empty buildings, and checked around the lake near her home. One of the search dogs even followed her scent to the edge of the lake, but divers found nothing. Police also questioned 51 registered offenders living in the area, but none were connected to the case. Adre'Anna's parents took lie detector tests. Her mother passed, but her father's results were unclear. However, police said they were not ruling anyone out or naming suspects. Weeks went by, then months. Winter turned to spring. The case went cold, and detectives continued to work quietly behind the scenes. Then in April 2006, 4 months after she vanished, 2 boys playing in a vacant lot near Woodbrook Middle School, about 2 miles from Adre'Anna's home, found a skull and part of a spine. Police quickly confirmed the remains were Adre'Anna's. The discovery was heartbreaking for the whole community. The area was known as a shortcut for local kids and a place where homeless people sometimes stayed. It had been searched once before, but the cold weather and thick bushes made it hard to search properly at the time. When construction workers later cleared the land, her remains were uncovered. Investigators searched the lot carefully, going through it grid by grid. Sadly, because of the time that had passed and the winter weather, the medical examiner could not find a clear cause of death. Even today, no one knows exactly what happened to Adre'Anna Jackson. She was a bright, sweet child who left home one snowy morning and never came back. Her death remains a tragic mystery that still haunts Lakewood, Washington. Brandon Swanson, 2008. Brandon Victor Swanson was born on January 30th, 1989, and lived with his parents, Brian and Annette, in Marshall, Minnesota. Marshall is a small town about 3 hours west of Minneapolis, near the border with South Dakota. Brandon was part of a farming community. He had been blind in his left eye since birth, but otherwise lived a normal life. When he was 15, he started working at a local food store. In 2006, he was convicted of driving under the influence of alcohol, but somehow managed to get his license back later. After finishing high school in 2007, Brandon went to college in Canby, Minnesota, where he studied wind turbines. He hoped to continue his education in Iowa and eventually earn a degree in science. On May 13, 2008, 19-year-old Brandon was celebrating the end of his second semester of college. It was the last day of class. He left home around 6 p.m. and drove his Chevrolet Lumina to a party in the nearby town of Lind, about 7 miles away. At the party, he drank alcohol even though he was under 21. Later that night, between 10:30 and 11 p.m., Brandon left the first party and drove to another one in Canby, which was about 30 miles from his home. There, he had at least one more drink before leaving around midnight to head home. The trip should have taken about 40 minutes, but Brandon never made it. Instead of driving on the main highway, he chose smaller dirt and gravel roads that ran parallel to it. It's believed he wanted to avoid the police, since he had been drinking and didn't want to risk another DUI charge. Around 1:15 a.m., Brandon's car got stuck in a ditch near a rural intersection about 20 miles from his home. His car wasn't damaged, and he wasn't hurt, but he couldn't get it out. He called some friends for help, but no one picked up. Then at 1:54 a.m., he called his parents. Brandon told them that he was stuck near the town of Lind and that he knew exactly where he was. His parents drove to the area he described, but they couldn't find him. Both Brandon and his parents flashed their headlights, hoping to see each other, but nothing worked. Brandon then told his parents that he could see the lights of Lind in the distance and decided to walk toward them. He planned to meet his father in the parking lot of a local bar called the Lind Tavern. His father dropped his mother off at home and then headed out to pick him up. At 2:23 a.m., Brandon and his father were still talking on the phone as Brandon walked. He said he was taking a shortcut through a field and could hear running water nearby. About 47 minutes later, at 3:10 a.m., Brandon suddenly said, "Oh shit," and the call ended. His father tried calling back several times, but Brandon didn't answer. His parents searched for him for hours before reporting him missing at 6:30 a.m. Police at first didn't take it seriously, thinking he had just run away, but later, when they traced his phone, they discovered that he wasn't near Lind at all. He had been northwest of Taunton, about 25 miles away from where he thought he was. Brandon's car was found in the ditch, stuck but undamaged. The keys were missing, and there was no sign of him nearby. Search dogs followed his scent from the car to the edge of the Yellow Medicine River, and then on the other side, as if he had crossed it. But no trace of Brandon, not his clothes, phone, or keys, was ever found. Over the years, search teams have covered more than 120 square miles, but nothing has been discovered. Some believe Brandon fell into the river and drowned. Others think he might have climbed out but later died from the cold. A few suggest foul play, but there's no real evidence of that. The most likely explanation is that Brandon got lost, fell into or crossed the river, and then died from exposure. It was around 40 degrees Fahrenheit that night, and he had been walking in the dark through fields after drinking. His poor vision and exhaustion made things worse. He had a bright future ahead, but took risks that led to tragedy. Despite years of searching, Brandon Swanson has never been found. The death of Terrance Williams and Felipe Santos, 2004. In the quiet parts of southwest Florida, where the Everglades meet the beaches, two men disappeared without a trace. Their names were Terrance Williams and Felipe Santos. Both vanished after being seen with the same man, Deputy Sheriff Stephen Calkins. Terrance Williams was 27 years old. He had 4 children, worked 2 jobs, and loved reading. He had recently moved to Florida to be near his mother. On the morning of January 12, 2004, Terrance was driving to a party when Deputy Calkins began following him. A cemetery worker named Jeff Cross saw what happened next. He saw the deputy pat Terrance down and search him. Terrance kept his hands up, showing he had nothing on him. Then, Calkins put Terrance in the back of his patrol car and drove away. Later, the deputy came back alone and had Terrance's car towed. Calkins later claimed he was just helping Terrance, saying he gave him a ride to a nearby Circle K store because Terrance's car had broken down. But witnesses say Terrance's car wasn't broken, he had been pulled over. Calkins said he dropped him off and left, but this story didn't match the facts. Even more troubling, Calkins made a disturbing and racist phone call to another officer that day, joking about Terrance's car and imitating black slang. He laughed about the car being towed and made comments that sounded disrespectful and cruel. Later, investigators found out that Calkins looked up Terrance's name in the system using a false birth date, one that only Terrance himself would have known. When asked how he knew that date, Calkins pretended to be confused. He then failed a lie detector test, especially when asked if Terrance was with him when he made that record. Terrance was never seen again. Now, let's go back 3 months earlier, to October 14, 2003. Felipe Santos, a 23-year-old man from Mexico, was driving to work early in the morning when he got into a small car accident The deputy who showed up was again Stephen Calkins. Felipe didn't have a driver's license or insurance, and the other driver said Calkins seemed annoyed and tired of dealing with such cases. Calkins claimed he didn't want to arrest Felipe and decided to just give him tickets instead. He said he gave Felipe a ride to a Circle K store, gave him the tickets, and told him not to drive anymore. But Felipe never arrived at work, and his family never saw him again. The tickets Calkins claimed to have written had wrong spellings of Felipe's name and a signature that didn't match his real one. A handwriting expert said Felipe didn't sign them. Calkins's story had big holes. Records showed a gap of almost 2 hours that morning when no one knew where he was. Investigators later said that missing time was the most important part of the case. They found that he hadn't made a single arrest in nearly 3 years, even though he was writing hundreds of police reports. Nobody in his department had noticed. When asked about this, the sheriff said he was surprised. But by then, it was too late. Both men were gone. Calkins was finally fired in August 2004 for lying and giving false statements. His patrol car was searched, and investigators even used cadaver dogs and radar on his property years later, but they never found any trace of the 2 missing men. For Marsha Williams, losing her only son left a deep wound. She kept a lock of his hair and his picture and raised his children without him. "A mother knows," she said when asked if she thought Calkins was responsible. Meanwhile, Felipe's family in Mexico still waits for answers. His friend told CNN, "He didn't deserve to be disappeared like this. We just want to find him so his parents can give him a proper burial." To this day, no one knows what happened to Terrance Williams or Felipe Santos. Both vanished after being seen with the same deputy, and despite all the investigations, no evidence, no bodies, and no justice have ever been found. The disappearance of Jennifer Poole, 2003. Jennifer Poole was last seen on April 29, 2010, in Bay Shore, New York. She lived in a small cottage apartment behind her landlord's house. She was friendly and fun when she was young, but in high school, things began to fall apart. Jennifer dropped out in 10th grade and started spending time with the wrong people. She began using drugs, and her relationship with her family became strained. In her late 20s or early 30s, Jennifer tried to turn her life around. She went to rehab and even earned her GED. She studied medical billing, and her mother helped her by buying her a computer and software. For a short time, she seemed to be doing well. But soon she fell back into old habits and surrounded herself with people who encouraged her drug use. Jennifer's ex-boyfriend, Joey, spoke about their relationship in a podcast. He said they had lived together for a while but broke up a few weeks before she disappeared. Even though they had problems, he still cared for her deeply. Joey remembered seeing her not long before she went missing and said she looked like she had been beaten. She had bruises and black eyes but claimed she had hurt herself by accident. Joey didn't believe her. Another man, Bruce Eustace, was also in Jennifer's life. He was wealthy and often tried to win Jennifer's affection by buying her gifts and paying for her needs. Jennifer moved in with Bruce for a time, living in a house that used to belong to Bruce's late mother. But eventually, they were both evicted from that home after legal problems. Bruce lost everything, including his mother's ashes, which were kept inside the house. After that, Bruce found a new place to stay, an apartment connected to a real estate agent named Barbara. Barbara's brother had a small cottage apartment on his property, and Bruce paid for Jennifer to live there. This was the same apartment in Bay Shore where she would later disappear. Jennifer and Bruce's relationship was strange. Some people said Bruce gave Jennifer drugs to keep her close. Others said Jennifer simply liked being around him because he gave her everything she wanted. Around this time, Joey moved back in with Jennifer for a short while, but he left when she started inviting strange men over. In the days before Jennifer vanished, she looked injured and frightened. Christine's boyfriend at the time, Neil, said he saw her with bruises and dark circles under her eyes. She said something had fallen and hit her nose, but Neil didn't believe it. He also noticed suspicious men sitting in a car outside while Jennifer talked to him. Jennifer disappeared soon after. Her family stopped hearing from her completely. She was 38 years old when she went missing. When Christine went to her apartment, she found something that made her uneasy. Her landlord was inside, packing up Jennifer's belongings as if he already knew she wasn't coming back. Her bed sheets and blankets were stuffed into large black garbage bags, and some of the bedding seemed to be stained with blood. Christine called the police, who came to the scene. When they arrived, they saw blood splatter and other strange signs in the apartment. It was treated as a crime scene, but Jennifer was nowhere to be found. Her purse and other personal items were missing too. The police questioned the landlord, but there were never any arrests. Christine believes the landlord knows what happened, or at least helped cover it up. She has continued to push for answers, but to this day, Jennifer's body has never been found. Jennifer Poole's disappearance remains one of Long Island's quiet mysteries, a story of a woman who struggled through life, tried to rebuild, and then vanished without a trace. Her family still hopes that one day they'll finally learn the truth about what happened to her. Murder of Alistair Wilson, 2004. In November 2004, the Wilson family lived at 10 Crescent Road in the seaside town of Nairn, Scotland. Alistair Wilson was a 30-year-old banker, and his wife, Veronica, was a graphic designer. They had met in Fort William, got engaged just 6 weeks later, and married in 1998. Together, they had 2 young sons and were known to be a happy, close family. Alistair was a kind and caring man who loved his family deeply. At the time, Alistair had only 2 weeks left at his banking job. He planned to leave the bank and start a new career in environmental work, as he wanted to do something that made a real difference. He had grown tired of the constant rule changes and pressure at the bank. The last weekend of November was a busy one for the Wilsons. On Saturday, November 27th, they wrapped Christmas presents and cleaned the house before inviting friends over. The next day, they spent time with their friends and children, enjoying a peaceful Sunday. In the evening, they had dinner upstairs with Veronica's father, who lived in the same building. After dinner, they went back downstairs to put the children to bed. That night, they were also looking after a friend's 18-month-old child, who was supposed to be picked up later. While Veronica did laundry, Alistair read a book to the children. Around 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Thinking it was the child's parent, Veronica went to answer it. It was unusual because visitors normally came to the back door, but she didn't think much of it. When she opened the front door, she found a man she didn't recognize. He was described as white, between 35 and 40 years old, of medium build, clean-shaven, and around 5'6" to 5'11" tall. He wore dark jeans, a dark baseball cap, and a blue bomber jacket. The man said only 2 words, Alistair Wilson. Veronica assumed he was one of Alistair's work colleagues and went upstairs to get her husband. Alistair went down to speak with the man while Veronica stayed with the children. About 10 minutes later, Alistair returned upstairs holding a blue envelope. The word Paul was written on it, but it was completely empty. Confused, Alistair said he was going back to the door to check. Moments later, Veronica heard 3 loud bangs. When she ran downstairs, she found Alistair lying at the front door, bleeding heavily. He had been shot 3 times, once in the body and twice in the head. Panicked, Veronica ran across the road to the Havelock Hotel for help. As she did, she saw the mysterious man calmly walking away, still holding the blue envelope. Emergency services arrived quickly, but Alistair sadly died about an hour later on the way to the hospital. Police began a large investigation, questioning more than 14,000 people and collecting over 700 pieces of evidence, but nothing useful came up. 10 days later, a worker found a small gun, a rare 1920s pistol, in a drain half a mile away. Tests proved it was the murder weapon, but there wasn't enough DNA to identify the killer. No one was ever arrested. Over the years, many theories appeared. One caller to a radio show claimed to know who the killer was and said he was connected to a businessman involved in Northern Ireland paramilitary groups. Police looked into it but found nothing solid. There were also false rumors that Alistair owed money or was involved in crime, but no evidence supported these claims. Some people think it was a case of mistaken identity. Another man named Alistair Wilson lived nearby, but he had no criminal ties and later died. The mystery of the empty blue envelope and the name Paul remains unsolved. In 2020, Alistair's son Andrew made a public appeal for new information. Police later said the bullets were made in the 1980s or 1990s and hoped new DNA technology might finally reveal the killer. Veronica and her sons still live in Nairn and continue to seek justice. In 2021, police gathered 150 new statements after Andrew's appeal. Investigators suggested the shooting might have been linked to an argument about decking at the hotel across the street. By 2024, Scotland's top legal officer ordered a full new investigation. Nearly 20 years later, the murder of Alistair Wilson remains one of Scotland's most puzzling and tragic unsolved cases. The Wilson family still hopes that one day, the truth will finally be revealed.